Hey, welcome to another Tampa Fishing Outfitters live fishing report. Awesome. It's cold, and I'm Captain Rick with Captain Travis and Captain James. We're here tonight. Got an hour with you. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. And I ain't going to be able to give no fishing report, even though it's a live fishing report, because I haven't been on the water in a week. It's just been too daggum cold.
It has.
It has been cold, man.
So sit down, grab a cup of hot chocolate or coffee, and join us.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about. Well, we got a lot to talk about.
Oh, we got a lot. We always can talk.
We don't really have a whole lot of fishing report. I know actually James probably went out more than I did in the last week.
Yeah,
for sure. I know myself, man. I've been taking advantage of having a little time off and spending some time with the youngin' and getting the old skiff. It's like ooh. But yeah, the skiff. I've been working on the skiff, and it's just about done. I've got it. Took it over today and took it to a welder. He's gonna do a couple things on the tower for me. Once that gets back in a day or two, it'll go to powder coat, and then the boat's getting gel coated next week. So real close on that. So stay tuned. I'll have some pictures of that coming up, man. I'm super stoked to finally get that one off my chest. But get back to fishing. Here in next week, I'm going to start back up. Got some trips lined up, so hopefully we get through these little cold spurts here. Everything settles down, and get back to doing what we normally do this time of year, which is trout and sheepshead fishing, really.
Pretty much.
If the weather's nice, we'll do some snook fishing, but I can't see that in the foreseeable near future anyway. Even if you do get on a snook bite, I mean, for me personally, I'm probably going to stray away from it. I'm not going to really target them. Let them do their thing. It was nice today. We did have a really cold morning this morning, freezing temperatures, but the sun came out, and not necessarily say it warmed it up any substantial way, but it definitely made a difference. I think it was nice to have that, especially clear water conditions, shallow. Yeah. It's going to help those fish, kind of get through it. So with that being said, hopefully we get through this next one, and next week looks beautiful. So even as far as Sunday looks good, or near Sunday.
Yeah,
so.
It's supposed to warm up next week, which is what we need.
Shoot this weekend.
Yeah, this Sunday is supposed to be nice.
But I mean the water's going to take a little longer to warm up. Yeah. But the one thing I've learned, and I have not fished since we did the show last week. Actually spent 5 days up north, but the one thing that I have noticed is, and I noticed it this week, 20 degrees in Johnson City, Tennessee, is equivalent to 50 degrees here. It's their cold up there is different than our cold. Our cold here is really, really cold.
Yeah, you ain't lying, buddy. It was,
and I'm
this
not
morning.
sure
it wasn't chilly.
exactly.
It wasn't a little bit cold, buddy. It was flat out cold,
Yeah.
dude.
I was in a T-shirt and sweatshirt up there, and it was 20 degrees, and it was chilly,
Yeah.
but I wasn't
It's that
uncomfortable.
humidity. It's that
Here,
humidity. It's that
it
cold.
was-
It's that wet air.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
especially being on the water.
Bites you.
Especially being
The
on the
wind.
water, you get that cool north
Yeah.
wind blowing
Little
on you, man.
moisture in
It'll go right through your bones. But anyway, so James, I know you've been out here recently throwing some artificials.
Yeah.
And before the show, we kind of talked about what may be good to go over this week. Talk a little bit about this. Talk a little bit about that. We also this is one of those open shows where we don't really have any set hardcore platform to go off here. So if you guys are listening and have got some questions, go ahead and throw those up. We'll scroll through them as we're going and get some of your questions answered. But James has been throwing a lot of artificials the last few trips out, and so we put a hodgepodge of artificials up here. We've also going to have trivia coming up, and somebody's going to get a cool little gulp package, arty package to take home for doing trivia.
Yes, we got 2 packages of gulp and the hooks.
The jig heads,
Jig
which
heads.
those are pretty
But
sweet.
they got hooks in
I
them.
haven't seen these yet.
Yeah.
But is any of this what you used?
Yeah, stuff similar. I mostly throw like Slayer baits, Z-Man gulp. So I mean, it's all along the same lines. A lot of these color patterns, these I call them warmer colors. Because you kind of go against that old grain of clear water,
Right.
light bait. But in the wintertime, I like these black and golds, root beers, golds,
Got some earthy tones.
chartreuses that you throw in there. But no, I put artificial lures in clients' hands for the first time last Friday.
It's
and-
funny, right?
Yeah,
it's
it's
kind of like
kind of
you
a
don't
weird
really know how
feeling,
it's going
yeah.
to go.
But I can tell they had a knack for it. They busted up a few trout on shrimp, and we had some white bait. But it was cool water, so neither was really producing that well. But I knew those fish were there. I could see the fish, and as soon as we put some jerk baits in there, it was
Bam.
boom, boom,
Started making it happen.
boom.
Pretty slow presentation.
Yeah, very slow. You've got to be in contact with the bottom. You've at least got to feel the bottom as you're working it. If you're not, actually, one of them had a paddle tail, one of them had a jerk bait. The guy, and with the jerk bait, he was definitely staying on the bottom more, and versus the other guy who's feeling like he's got to work it a little bit faster to feel that vibration. The jerk bait definitely outfished the paddle tail.
So that's the jerk bait. For those of y'all that don't know what a jerk bait is, and then the paddle tail is going to look more like this. And we got the one with the chartreuse tail, so you can maybe pick that up in the video there. But
Yeah.
this is what this to me, like, and I always go back to it. And I don't know if it's like a real like technical term, but you always flutter these jigs, and especially when you're using a jig head, you're really going to get good flutter because this jig's going to come up and it's going to swim down naturally. Whereas your jerk bait is going to be more of that dart action, more of the side to side or a quick dart up and down. This guy to me works better for me in a little bit deeper water. For me personally, I like my jerk baits or my jerk shads in some shallower water most of the time.
And that one with the chartreuse tail, we talked about this. It was either last week or the week before. If you're fishing around a lot of puffer fish, you don't want to use these because you're going to get one cast and that part's going bye bye.
Yep.
So
I mean, it's sort of just inevitable
then it's
of
a
the
jerk
bait.
at that point.
And not being biased, we try not to give our personal opinions as much, but Z-Man probably has the staple on this in the industry of the baits, the elasticity of the baits that enable them to have these real fine tails that don't break quite as bad. Other products tend to get a little bit small down here, and then where they mold these two colors together because it's not shot in one piece.
Right.
So a lot of times the main color's shot, and they put a tail back onto it, and that bond between the colored tail and the stem there is never as good as one quality shoot of the material. So a lot of times you get these old tails popping off.
You got all that
But,
technical lingo down on.
Well, I did some injection molding in years past, so I've got a little bit of experience with it. But that's what happens. It's the shot. That's what they call when you make a product coming out of a mold, whether it's injection mold or whatever. Those are called shots. When you make a push of plastic or material into the mold, that's a shot.
But what's
And
this
so-
little piece right here? You called it a shoot. right there.
Well, I was just saying, I don't know what they call it, but like the shaft, I don't know, the stem of the bait. I'm just talking about this bait when it's molded.
So you really
doesn't have a tail
there
on it.
wasn't as much there as I thought when you I was like, whoa, man, this guy's got it. But
Well,
so really, there's not as much there. As
I basically made all that stuff.
pretty much. He's never even seen
most of it. I've never even
He's never
seen
even
it.
seen the molding
But hey,
process.
did
of
you buy it?
baits.
Did you buy it? Was it pretty good? Was it pretty good?
You had me till.
You had me till, yeah. But no, basically that's what we talked about, and I think that's what we were really trying to do is just show that those are the types of baits we're talking about, where you've got two separate colors from the tail to the body, and just be careful because there are times though when baits like these are very productive. Trout fishing, I've seen it a lot, and even some redfish, where you throw some of these funky colors and you catch the attention of a fish.
Right.
The point we were trying to make is that if you're fishing around a flat that's heavily populated with pinfish or puffer fish, plan on leaving them in the bag.
What's
man.
funny here is we all three walked down there and grabbed baits that we thought we would, you know, bring up here tonight and show people what we.
And that ain't the one.
No, all these baits are the same.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, as far as the colors are so close, and that's just funny.
Well,
there's a bunch of stuff down there.
Go with what works.
Made for the fishermen, not for the fish. This is stuff that's made for the fish.
That's right. And so, soft plastics, we got a selection of cow baits from DOA and also some Gulp product. But one that we don't really talk about a whole bunch is our topwater stuff. And a few weeks back we got talking about, and I think I asked the question of, if you left the dock today, and you had 3 rods set up, what would you have on those 3 rods? And kind of subconsciously we all picked a topwater, a subsurface, and a bottomer, jig bait. And this was the topwater that I was talking about. And this one's made by, I'm going to say it's Hedden. That's the way I say it. Some people say Hedon or whatever, but that's in the bone color. I'm trying to get that down there. For whatever reason, that bone color, man, just does wonders. I think it looks like the belly of a mullet or any type of bait fish on the surface flopping around. But I kind of always kept it simple with my topwaters. And these two guys right here, this is the Zara Spook and this is the Zara Pup. And this little guy right here is incredible for snook fishing, especially in an area where guys have been using a lot of live bait. And you throw something like this on the surface, it looks like a little chummer, and they just come out and grab it. And then the other one there, I know you've probably used that one, James, is the Miradine, which we talked about. And I know probably a lot of folks that fish our area have used a Miradine. I mean, if there's any other bait, with the exception of some of the newer stuff like the live target and stuff like that, this was the bait that looked the most like our white bait in Tampa Bay.
Right.
And they were, local company, St. Pete, Largo area, and they get several different colors of that. But I really like these baits for this time of year.
And
the smaller
one
ones.
thing about any of these baits, and I always feel like I just need to say it when we're talking about the hard plastic baits, is any of these you can take that front hook off, and you'll lose about 1% of the fish that you would have caught by not having that front hook on, especially on these smaller ones. But what it does make a huge difference on is the catch and release aspect. If you got a fish that you're not keeping, if he's an undersized fish, not in the slot, it's big impact on that.
Even the fishability of it, if you're this time of year, you're fishing these lower tides, that treble right there is bound to get hung up in some grass,
especially on that one.
Yeah. To go back to what you said, there's a lot of different products out there now, but I could tell you that no one passes the counter more than this guy right here.
I believe that.
5 to any other one that's out there, and there's a lot of good products out there, but this has just been a staple. I like this color with that gold flash in it, kind of that yellow belly, but they make so many good colors for this time of year. And but the Miradine especially, what I'm also seeing is in the topwaters or any of the hard baits that are selling right now and fishing these lower tides where you're sometimes in contact with the grass or you need to be right above the grass, people are buying those single inline hooks and switching them out. And I've never really done it. I know Rapala switched over to using the single, the non-treble inline hooks. and just about every bait they're producing now. And you'll even start to see that in some of the grouper trolling plugs next year based on what we saw at ICAST.
It was a popular thing, not necessarily with the Mirrodine, but definitely with Top
Yeah.
in the tournament scene, was taking that back trebles off. I even know guys that don't only run a single. They'll take the middle off. Is that what you were just talking about?
Yeah.
But they'll take this off with the circle hook there for the reasons of not damaging the fish, like you talked about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But even with the weeds and negotiating anything else on the surface, it's going to help you there too. So it does have a lot of benefit. And you would think by reducing the amount of hooks on that bait, you'd see a difference. And like you said, you really don't.
You don't.
You're going to hook up just as good, especially on these smaller ones. I would say that on the bigger plugs, like as you start getting into, and I don't know, anybody ever seen like the giant wooden, top water plugs? Plugs used to be like this
Big musky plugs.
You're gonna go out there and catch some snook, man. The guy shows up and he's got 18 fish on this thing, you know. But as you get kind of bigger, the fish don't tend to inhale them
Right.
like they do with some of these smaller baits,
Yeah.
Mirrodine, stuff like that. And so not having all them troubles in there is going to help you.
And they're usually coming up anyway and hitting from the back of the bait anyway. So here you go, right here. But that's just for the and how many times do we catch a lot of small trout and knowing that you're going to be keeping one out of every 10 because that time of year, especially in the fall when you're just hammering the 13.5, 14 inchers, and if you're doing it with artificials, you're just doing them injustice to keep
Right.
all the hooks on. But
not to mention just from when you get into them, you get into trout and you start pulling in trout when they're grouped up like they are this time of year, one after another. Take these things away from. I don't want treble hooks near me.
Right.
I've had more treble hooks in my hands than I want to share. So
go to these.
Oftentimes when I get into them, I start moving away. This is like a search bait,
Right.
Fine
Right.
fish. They can't resist reacting to it.
Correct.
Once you get into them,
Even if you don't catch them, you'll see them roll up
Exactly,
on it. But
yeah.
then you go.
they'll give you the signs.
soft plastics and some of these.
All right. Sorry, guys. I think I got mine fixed. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now?
All right. So yeah, we were talking about some baits, and we're gonna go through here, guys. I know we hadn't answered some of these questions, so we're gonna scroll through them real quick. We'll start down here at the bottom. We had one comment. We got a guy, Edward, looking for a boat. When is a good time to start looking? It's always a good time to look here in Florida. There's always something for sale. We'll give a little shout out to you. If anybody's got a boat for sale, Edward might be looking for one. Post a link on this page if you want to, whatever. It's cool. But that's going to be the best way. Look, join some of the Facebook groups.
Yeah, if you buy new, don't buy Ranger. Just saying.
Only
if you buy new.
Shrimp running under the bridges. I hadn't really seen any shrimp. And here again, guys, I'm going to be honest with you, I hadn't been on the water a whole bunch in the last week. So
here's one. Been seeing
I hadn't been
fish being killed.
Manny says, been seeing different fish being killed, and I don't think it's all cold water. What do you guys think, especially some catfish dying now? Manny, I don't know where you're talking about. I don't know if
exactly
he's talking about up north.
Upper Bay.
I mean, I can almost guarantee.
Wasn't there a little report of red tide on the outside?
There was. I
about
think
a
it was
week
south
ago?
of us, from what I understood. But he's probably, if he's talking about catfish, it's up north. I'm not sure what's going on. It's got to be. I'm assuming it's cold water, but there's a lot of dead catfish floating around in the Upper Bay.
Okay.
But there's a lot of healthy redfish and trout swimming right next to those catfish. So it's a little weird. It's probably been going on for a week or so. It started when that last cold front came in. So, Manny, I'm assuming it's the cold. I've never really seen that before, but if it was the red tide, I think we'd see an absence of game fish, and there's even bait still around.
Right.
So
Right.
I can't. I'm pretty sure it's just the cold.
Yeah, especially if you're seeing jacks.
Yeah.
Jacks and snook seem to kind of belly up pretty quick.
I think we got.
Did we get caught up?
I think we were. Sorry, guys. We were trying to. I think we got them all. I think Mike was just asking about some shrimp running under the bridges at night. And I know up north they probably do this a lot more. I know they do a lot more than us up in the Jacksonville area, up in the St. Johns River. They do a lot more shrimping and stuff like that than we do. I personally have never shrimped in Tampa Bay or tried to catch shrimp. And to be completely honest with you, Mike, I really don't fish a whole lot of bridges. Most of the stuff we fish around here is going to be, sand holes, potholes, grass flats, ditches, creeks, troughs, stuff like that. So, but if anybody does do shrimping and stuff like that, and they got a bridge you've been around or whatever, maybe give us a shout out. Let us know. Give us a report on the
customers are starting to come in and make the purchases that lead me to believe they're going shrimping. So,
here.
yeah,
Okay.
So I mean,
now
I can't speak. I don't know, but
let's talk a little bit about that and what kind of nets. I mean, I know Lee Fisher has nets for shrimping. But what kind of nets are you seeing come off the shelf to do?
So within the last week, I realized that I'm the last guy to ask that because I don't know much about it. I've never done shrimping like that, at least since I was a kid. But they've got next door any kind of handled net you can think of. I mean, it's in any size mesh. They also have mesh and cast nets that's fine, 3/16, so even finer than 1/4 inch and even smaller than that. I think they've got some smaller radius, like 5 and 6 foot ones. I know we've got it.
Travis and I need a fiddler crab net.
Fiddler crab net?
I just need a fiddler crab supplier.
Yeah, I was going to say a fiddler crab source would be even better.
Just fiddler up, baby.
I was looking at some sheep's head thinking that the other day. I said, man, I wish I had a fiddler crab.
Oh, man. Manny says shrimp are running in the south right now. Maybe that's where that comment came from, but I know the guys are tarpon fishing like crazy right now, Fort Lauderdale, Miami area, and there's a lot of tarpon fishing going on around that those shrimp runs. So that may be where you're talking about. And from what I know, that's been real good down that way. I don't know how this cold front's affected it, but you might be able to get a report, or maybe we can get a report from here to let us know how that's going down there. Where do we find whitebait, flats, and St. Joseph Sound area? I'll be honest with you, man. I mean, I don't think it's there.
No,
yeah, I was going to say.
It's too cold.
Not this time of year.
You don't want it anyways, probably there.
Right. There's some guys up that way. If anybody's listening that fishes up that way, can give us a report. I don't know if that power plant up there holds bait because it's closer to the Gulf than ours is, but I wouldn't know that answer. I wouldn't think so. I would say that pinfish or some creek chubs or some other sort of bait like that would probably be a better find anywhere. Be able to find that better than catching whitebait this time of year. But anyway, so let's talk a little bit about some tactics. Obviously we've got a ton of soft plastics. We've got all these hard baits and stuff like that. But anybody that walks into the store can walk down there going, "Oh, that looks good," or "This looks good," or "That looks good." What are you looking for when you're going to take a bait like this out, especially this time of year? What are we looking for out there that makes sense to stop and sort of fish? Whether it's grass flats, whether it's potholes, whether it's those troughs. What sort of stuff are you looking at this time of year, especially coming off our coldest cold front that we've had? What are we going to be looking at? Or what are you going to be looking at over the next couple days, week or so, to be catch some fish?
For me, it's really clean. Like if we're talking about trout, which right now I would say that's probably the number one target. I mean, that's probably going to be what you're going to go out and have the most fun doing and be the most successful at. So for trout, I like the cleanest, clearest water I can find. The clearer, the better. Which we have some place up there where it's gin clear. In fact, we were at the Howard Franklin Bridge in 15 feet of water. You can see the bottom, no problem, up there. So it's really cleaned up. So I'm looking for clean water. And in the seminar we did last night, somebody asked the same question. And for me, it's all about features. Every side of the bay is, while they're all similar, they have their kind of different features. Up north we have a lot of oyster bars, a lot of rocks, or shell bottom, we call it, where it's just like broken rocks and shells. So I'm looking for those features where I can find that, to me, trout look like they can ambush prey, or they can blend in, get on the edge of potholes. Certain areas up there have potholes, but a lot of it is just, broken bottom where it's mixed grass and sand. So it depends. When the sun is really high, I'm seeing them go shallower. So I like to get shallower when the sun's really high. First thing in the morning, I know they're going to be a little bit deeper, 3 to 4 feet maybe. But yeah, just really good clean water with a lot of features. And I've also said that, one of the questions is low tides. Like these really negative low tides, people are feeling like there's nowhere to go fish. And I've been talking about these trout and these redfish or these game fish that are sitting up on those features they really don't want to leave that area. So when this water's pushing out, think about when you went and caught them on that higher water. What were they in? 2, 3, 4 feet of water? Whatever you've been getting them in, just slide out.
Yep.
Just slide out to the edge of that flat. They don't want to leave that comfort zone. So, you know, if it's where I can't get to where I like to go fish them, just push out a little bit and try to find that same condition you were finding them in when the water was there. Same water depth, good clean water.
A lot of guys the old schoolers call it the reef. They get off the edge of the reef, and you know, growing up, we used to talk to a lot of people and stuff like that, especially around the Palm Beach area, and guys would always say, "Yeah, you know, redfish, they get off the end of the reef," and I'm like, "The end of the reef, man." I'm like, dude, I've never caught like
on the reef.
like you know, a big school redfish on the edge of the reef, man. Like, how do you find that? Like on the edge, or is it like on the reef, or is it on the edge of the reef? And they were telling me the whole time it was like on the edge of the bars, on the edge of the flats. You know, that was the reef to them, that drop off, that depression. So that was always funny to me when people would talk. And I think we try to do a good job, especially for the folks that listen to us week after week. We try to use some of the same terms, but what you'll notice is that it could mean like 3 or 4 different things, you know. So we do our best to sort of explain our lingo of what we're explaining.
White bait.
Yeah.
How many different
Right.
names has it got?
Yeah.
Right, and you know, like I write an article in the paper, and so like every time I put in my bait situation, it's like white bait parentheses pilchards, greenbacks, because it's the one that has so many different you know references. But so anyway, you know, we try to keep it the same, and if you kind of follow us a little bit here and there, you'll kind of get the pieces of the puzzle if you're new or trying to figure some of this stuff out. But James is right in terms of getting out this time of year on this lower water. This is when you're going to find these fish. Now, getting back to what James was talking about and what to look for and when I'm going to use some baits like this. And the one thing that always stems and brings to my mind is mullet. Mullet, mullet, mullet. And I really like throwing artificial baits, even with clients, when I get around these mullet schools. It makes a lot of sense. The mullet schools are moving. Generally, for the most part, mullet aren't just going to sit there and wait. A lot of times you're on the trolling motor, or you're bump fishing, you're drift fishing, and you're staying with that pack of mullet. And that school of mullet's normally going to swing from the bushes to the bar, some realm, and having the artificials is going to keep you mobile enough to kind of stay with it and fish for some redfish. Or if the mullet are around some deeper areas, a lot of times the trout are in those deeper depressions close to that area as well. The shrimp is getting stirred up, all the crustaceans, everything is going on. And so when there's not a lot of surface bait, greenbacks, little small threadies, whatever's going on, glass minnows, I feel like the fish are attracted to the mullet because that's what's giving them their food source this time of year. That's what they're going to feed off of. And so a lot of times the mullet is a big thing for me in finding the game fish that we're looking for this time of year. We got a question?
Do we have weak fish in Tampa Bay? They kind of look like sand trout. How do you tell the difference? They are strict regulations on weak fish. I think a weak fish and a spotted sea trout's the same thing.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
I think
Well,
it's a
they
variation.
claim that a speckled trout is a drum.
Mhm.
Well, I've had
And
several
so-
people from up north tell me that
Yes.
the weak fish and the trout they look
Oh,
identical.
They look
talking about silver
they look
trout, right?
identical.
Yeah.
No, and I'll get some guys, and this is like I'm talking New Jersey, New Yorkish area up in there, and what they'll say is they'll get these runs of these fish, and they come up in these rivers or these streams or whatever, and they'll catch them mainly on the bottom in high flow areas, which makes it sound like a sea trout. You know, some sort of predator type fish that lays in the bottom, uses the tide to feed. But as far as I know, and I'd love for somebody to chime in on this that knows, but weak fish up north are different than our speckled sea trout.
That'd be
in
I mean,
Florida.
I don't know, but
Because
I've
they
always
put
heard people
speckled
say,
sea
"No,
trout
that
in the
looks
drum
just like-"
family, and I don't think those weak fish.
Or drum.
I don't think they're in the same family. They look a lot alike. I want to even say they have the same like fang like deal going
People
on.
I've had on the boat tell me they look identical.
Yeah. So if somebody could verify that, I would love to know that.
Need some verification.
What the difference in that is. And the other one that we talked about, which is different, was the sheep's head. We talked about that last week about how, you know, this time of year you'll get a phone call from a guy in like
Sheep's head,
Illinois,
no,
and
I
he's
want
like,
that.
you know, you're like, yeah, we're gonna go sheep's head fishing. And he's
And
like,
there's another kind out west.
yeah, I'd rather just, you know, sit at home then.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't want to go catch
I don't
those.
want to catch a carp.
But no, so there's some different names for a lot of different stuff, and if you kind of put the pieces together, you'll figure it out. But let's do some.
Look, we're
let's
at
do
the
some
halfway mark. Let's do the
trivia. Yeah, baby.
This is the prize. A couple packs of Gulp and the pack of jig heads, and it's funny that we're going to do a giveaway Berkeley stuff, and we're going to trivia question has to do with DOA.
Oh, we're going for it.
We're going for it.
Oh,
the DOA, the cows.
Oh, man.
And I know this answer for a fact because I heard it come right out.
Mark Nichols, where you at, baby?
I heard it come right out of the horse's mouth.
Somebody tag Mark Nichols in this
What
video.
does CAL, the CAL, stand for? What is that an acronym for? CAL.
Well,
Not DOA. Not DOA. Not DOA. Cal.
CAL. I heard it straight from his mouth about 8-10 years ago.
Are we taking two answers?
No, we're taking the
one
answer. Your answer ain't right.
I'm telling you, man.
Your answer ain't right.
I think there's a G-rated and an R-rated version of this
Nope.
answer.
So anyway,
So
this should be
what does the Cal jig stand for? The CAL. It's an acronym for something. What does it stand for?
It's not California.
Not California.
No.
Not California. So
catch a lot. I like that one. That's not the
let's
answer, but I
let's
like
talk
it.
a little bit. Let's talk a little bit
Yep.
about.
It's gone. He got it.
All right, who is it?
Mark Magny.
Mark Magny.
You got it, Mark.
And then Jeffrey comes with your answer.
There it is. We need.
But it's not.
I'm gonna need an official. I'm gonna need
Mark,
an official.
Look, I heard it. I heard Mark Nichols say it.
I gotta have an official.
Well, you do
Well,
what you
I'm going
want.
to step in on behalf of the store, and either of those guys can do it.
Can get in. I like it.
So
Yeah,
you're gonna
Jeffrey or Mark.
You're going to give away two?
We'll give away two.
All right,
so
both you guys win,
there you
but
go.
Mark, you're right.
I like it.
Mark's right.
I like
Berkeley's
it.
been good to us. They'll be
Berkeley
cool
has
with
been good.
And this is a bait. Now this is a bait. You know, now that you bust out the, I tell you it's funny. Now that you bust out the artificial stuff that you've had all year, you know, you put this away last February.
it. Yeah.
And you forgot to leave. You left one on a jig head or something. And
Yeah,
it's like
the
it's
Berkeley
like
Gulp.
the 4-inch Berkeley Gulp is now a 1-inch
Yeah.
Berkeley brine shrimp.
Yeah. Hard as a rock.
The heart
like-
is a rock.
It's like
man.
the old head hunters,
Yeah.
you know, where they take the heads
Oh,
and they
yeah.
shrink them down. What are
Yeah.
they called? Witch
Voodoo.
doctors or
Voodoo.
Yeah. It's like,
It's like a voodoo doctor, man. I don't know what's in this stuff, but
it
it's
does.
air activated. So if
And
you're
you
gonna
ain't
use
getting
this,
it off a hook without a knife.
yeah, if you're
No.
gonna do this, if you're gonna use these guys, man, make sure you take them off when you get done. But if you're gonna be a gulp guy, what I recommend, these bags are great, and they will temporarily get you by. But if you're gonna be a gulp guy, get a little tote, get a little Tupperware container. Berkeley sells a product, you know, containers for this, and they got the juice. But you will end up having this all over your tackle bag or all over your boat.
Yeah, and they say you
somewhere.
can mix. They say, oh, you can mix them all together, and the
You'll
colors.
get a bunch of gray baits.
Exactly. Done it.
The
Been there.
colors-
I'm like, oh, okay, cool. That's nice. You can mix them
Yeah.
together, and you don't have to worry about them bleeding together.
Especially the white. They'll pick up all kinds of colors.
They-
So if you want some hurricane colors, some kamikaze
Well,
colors,
mine
you can
turned-
make your own.
Mine
Mix them
just
all together.
turned about the color of this table.
Yeah.
All
Still
of
work, I'm sure.
But,
well,
Still
yeah.
fishing.
But these are beneficial.
I
and
had
I
all
think,
root beer after that.
I think stink bait gets a little overlooked sometimes on how what a difference it can make. With a bait like a gulp, especially this time of year, fish aren't wanting to move a whole bunch. They're wanting to kind of pick things up more picky than hammering baits and stuff like that. And a lot of times we talk about the subtle differences. We talk about the little things. We talk about the size of our leader. We talk about our knots. We talk about how fast we move the bait, this, that, and the other. And smell is one of those ones that sometimes will get overlooked. And there are times when I believe that extra little scent or that extra little
Absolutely.
bit of it gets that bite. Now, and you've seen it. If you've sight fished redfish, you've seen fish knows your baits. Come up to it
It's got to be like
and
food for us.
instant.
I mean, how
just,
many
just turn away.
times
You know,
do you eat something because you smell it?
so
It's
you
like-
know you caught their attention. So you got that half of the battle right. You put the bait in the right place or whatever. They came up to it, but they turned away. And there's only really two things: the way it looked or the way it smelled. I guess maybe the way it moved.
Yeah.
or the way
but-
it sounded sometimes.
Or the way it sounds. So I guess there's a few more. But scent is one of those ones that you overlook, and I think gulp definitely gets you more bites. The flip side of this is your ProCure.
Yeah.
ProCure is the alternative to having a gulp.
Yeah.
You can put it on anything. They make tons of different flavors of it. The mullet and the shrimp are probably my favorite too.
Yeah.
They work great on soft plastics. Another thing that they work great on that I've used, and you will get redfish in particular that will come up to a spoon and nose it. Come right up to it and not even bite it, but just hit it with their nose. And one of the things we've done in the past is when you get fish like that won't commit, they don't want to eat, and they're trailing baits, is you put a smidgen or a finger of that Procure right on the inside of your spoon, wipe it in there like goo, and it'll last for a long time.
Well, like in these soft plastics, you can actually. Well, this ain't rocket science. I'm sure everybody out there is already doing this, but just put a little shot in the bag.
Everybody's been doing that.
That's old school.
That's the marinade.
Just
marinade.
put a little shot in the bag instead of putting it on each individual
right.
one.
The difference with that is, you get, and it gets all gooey and stuff in the bag, but
it's hard to break them, but
and
it
it's
works
nice.
well.
Well, it's nice because, like, let's say I don't want to ruin this whole bag. I don't want to use it all the time. I mean, you could take
so
one.
Why would you not want to use it?
I could tell you from spending a lot of time fishing artificials, the one time I put it in the bag, I said I'll never do that again. My fingers the whole day were, I got to ruin my pants over and over. But hey, it works.
Rick likes it though.
Yeah.
Like
worse than that.
Man, that stuff's disgusting.
Gulp is
this is like an in case of emergency bait for me, dude.
Right, right. They do have a purpose. So I tell you what, man, I was fishing a redfish tournament one time. It was actually the IFA championship the IFA Pro-Am that me and my cousin won in Punta Gorda. This is no lie. Day 2, I'm sitting there, and we'd already had 2 fish, not the pair that we took for the tournament, but we'd already had a pair of fish, and I said, man, I'm going to sit down and have a sandwich.
Yeah.
And I put a 4-inch gulp on there, dude.
On your sandwich?
Slung it, yeah. I had one on the sandwich, and another one I put
on his hook.
I slung one out there, dude. I put it in a rod holder, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, I was about halfway through my Publix cube, and that rod tip, and I go, oh, there he is, old catfish, right? He's dink, dink. And my cousin's going, hey, man, you got a fish. And I'm like, man, just let him choke it down, dude. I'm eating my sandwich, Sitting there. And all of a sudden, it hammers again one good time, and I'm like, he's got to get it here in a minute. About that time, I said, I'm going to get up. I stood up, dude, and I went like this, 34-inch redfish on a freaking gulp bait just sitting on the bottom. So, I mean, they will eat it, man. It happens quite a bit. Throw it on a popping cork.
And that used to be popular, dead stick in those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Another good one is in the Artie tournaments. If you want a dead stick or if you want to fish under mangroves, when fish get under cover, this is the bait, man. You can even take these and cut them. We used to take them and just cut them so they're like little, darts because it didn't matter. They're not at that point.
They're not identifying as a
exactly.
Shrimp.
They're on the hunt and they're simply using their nose up in those bushes. Limited visibility on their end, and they are just literally crushing everything that they can possibly get. The one thing that amazed me, and I talk a lot about redfish, but what always amazed me about redfish is how in the world, if you've ever cleaned one and they've got them little bitty baby crabs in them. I'm talking about, dude. I mean, some of these things, like you can tell that the crab claw is like the size of your fingernail. And you're going, man, how? And when they mow through that grass, they're just, it's like a filter.
Sucking them up.
Just sucking everything up, and whatever they don't eat just blows out their gills, I guess. But so you'd be surprised what they'll eat, especially this time of year. Yeah. Their foraging patterns have changed. Shrimp, crustaceans, crabs, everything's slowed down.
Do you look in the guts of every redfish you clean?
Not every one of them, but I'm pretty bad about it.
I do every one of them.
Not every one of them, just because sometimes we're in a rush, but I'd say at least 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10. No, it's done. Another one I like doing is my trout, and we've been on some good trout, bites here lately. And one of the interesting things that I like to do with trout is because trout's a fish that normally, when they're in good and you're in a good bite, you can get them chummed up and you can get them eaten pretty good. And so I always like to clean, and that's a fish you take home and keep, so you normally clean most of them. And I always like looking in their bellies to see how many baits, because they're always going to have some baits in them, how many baits are natural baits and how many baits are the ones that I fed them. And literally, you can scrape it out and you'll see 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever of the baits you were using that hadn't been melted down yet, and there's a 3 or 4 that have already been acid in the, and you know what I mean? So these fish are eating.
You say that
good.
because it was funny because the other day we did a it's been a month or so ago, but we did a little 2-boat deal, and I was cleaning one of the fish that I had caught or that one of my people caught, and Travis was there. Travis belly hooks. I nose hook most of the time. I nose hook,
That's right.
but he belly hooks all the time, and or most of the time. I can't say all
Belly
the
or
time.
tail in that area.
But or tail hooked. It was
Yes,
tail
I
hooked.
was
I'm
saying.
sorry. And one of the fish I cleaned, I just squeezed his guts, his stomach, and man, he shot out 4 or 5.
With holes in the
One of
tail.
them's got a hole with the
one
tail.
of one of
Yeah.
one of them one of his tail hook baits that we were kind of close together. So he went over there and then come over here, and that was
He was
I just thought
cruising.
that was kind of
Yeah.
funny.
Oh, yeah.
One of your
Oh,
guys
yeah.
just happened to miss him,
Yep.
and one of my guys.
I say that all the
got lucky
time because
enough
I
to
can
catch him,
tell
but-
because of the way I
Yeah.
bait those baits. I mean, like you'll see like 3 chummers, and that's the one that got him.
That
That was
was
the-
it wasn't a
that was the
bait.
doom bait
It wasn't
right
one
there.
of my baits that they had missed a fish on.
Right.
So this is
That's
funny.
good.
I tell you what's funny, man, is like redfish, and it really amazes me because I do fish with pinfish a lot for redfish. And one of the things that's always amazed me is like even snook, and I've cleaned quite a few snook, but snook and trout, normally you'll find if you've been fishing them, especially been chumming them, you'll find baits in the fish,
Mhm.
right? Now redfish is no exception. I'm not saying that, but a lot of times, like if you catch a redfish on like a big pin or medium-sized pin, you don't find that pinfish in their stomach.
Mm.
It's not there.
Yeah.
Like it's gone. Whereas like the trout and stuff like this, even flounder another one. Once they hit a bait, it goes down the hatch a lot of the times.
Yeah.
But when snook or redfish eat a big pinfish, a lot of times the pinfish goes to the wayside.
Yeah, but how many
They hit
times
it-
have you pulled one away that had scratch marks on
Oh,
it from
let me
the
tell you
crushers?
what, buddy.
Yeah.
I will tell you
That was going
when,
down.
when we're fishing with pinfish, and you get hit by redfish, it is no doubt. That thing looks like it went through a sausage meat grinder on the
Right.
side of the table.
Yep.
When that thing will come out, man, it'll look like something got a hold, like a damn possum got a hold of it. But
Well, there's a manual says frozen shrimp because it stinks.
Mm.
In all honesty, I mean, we don't do it because we just like making life harder on ourselves. But if you got high enough water this time of year, or places where the water's deep under the mangroves, go get some frozen shrimp, and you'll do better
Put 'em under
than
there.
we're gonna do with all this other elaborate stuff
Mhm.
that we're gonna for
Yep.
for redfish.
mm-hmm.
Frozen shrimp are awesome for redfish.
yeah.
Now you ain't gonna catch too many snook that way.
Not to mention your sheep's head and
Cheaphead,
depending on
absolutely.
where you're at, and it's something we don't talk about ever really, but mangrove snappers,
Mhm.
you're gonna find those right in the mix with these sheep's head this time of year, especially if you're fishing residential
And you
canals.
can get henways that
Um,
way. You can catch henways like that.
A henway?
A henway on frozen shrimp,
A henway.
What the heck is a henway?
about 2 pounds. They're a little smaller than a rooster.
All right, he got us. He got us on air.
All
That's
right. Let's go to Hordews.
Good
Uh,
I've been saving that one. I've been waiting to
that-
break that one
That was
out.
pretty good. I'm like, what are you talking about?
It'd been great if you just
Henway.
nodded. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. I've been seeing
I've been seeing schools of them everywhere.
henways. Yeah.
This time of year is the only time they really show up. You know what I mean?
That's all I got.
But
I'm done.
but anyway, yeah. So
Dude, the snapper in those canals been so thick. I've been going, taking people to sheep's head spots, and I'm like, man, I promise there's sheep's head here, and all it is snapper. I mean, I can't even get through them. They're so
yep,
feisty.
yep, no doubt. Well, and we're Captain James and I are gonna head offshore tomorrow and go do
Yeah.
some stuff. So we'll have a little report. Weather's supposed to be nice. It's gonna be cold, but the winds are
Be
supposed to
very
be down a
cold.
little bit.
Yeah.
You
As Jason
gonna
would
go,
say, polishing the turds. But
oh, gee, I can't even think of what the what's it?
Careful
Easy.
here, Travis.
Easy.
He's gonna.
Easy.
He's trying.
This is a big
drum
one.
one up.
No,
Big one.
I just for some reason
Yeah.
the name of the fish just.
Hogfish.
Hogfish.
Yellowtail, yeah.
hogfish.
Are y'all going hog
Yeah,
fishing?
we're gonna give it
Yeah.
a shot. There's a place we've been, I've hit a couple times in the last few months that has been hit or miss on hogfish, but when it's missed, it's yellowtail snapper. So
You gonna bring me a little groceries?
I might.
Just enough for some Friday
Yeah.
night dinner.
It could be.
Yeah.
All
Could
right.
be. We could be doing a fish fry. I like it. I like the Ruskin fish
you bring
fry.
the
idea.
henways.
I'll
Yeah, you bring the henways. Jason bring the hordews, and we're good to go.
You bring the hogfish and snapper.
Yeah.
Pink snapper, red snappers. What kind of we? Anyway, so let's answer some questions, man. Has anybody got any questions? We got about probably 15 minutes to kind of open it up, man. sorry that we don't really have a whole lot of fishing report kind of going on.
No,
but
this show is not organized tonight, and that's my fault. I just had
Rick doesn't have his binder.
I don't have. I don't have,
we don't have the binder.
But no, there was just some things went on today that made just anyway. The show's
Rick's had a tough day.
Rick
has had a tough day.
It's on me tonight.
Jason is
Pele
is soccer dadding it.
Yeah, we like to call Jason
really?
Pele Prieto.
Cool.
Pele Prieto.
So he's with the kid tonight. The kids playing some soccer. So we covered it. The reason why we're tonight, by the way, it is Thursday night. TFO had a fishing seminar last night, and we were going to do it Tuesday. And the weather was so nice that we actually all had some stuff going on outside. And I know I was working on fiberglass work, and Jason was working on some deck stuff, and Rick was doing water fixes. So it worked out better for us to do Thursday. So we will be back on track going forward, back to Wednesday. Yep. Yeah. Captain James got to come in and hang out with us.
What beer do I need to bring to the fish fry?
Whatever, brother.
Yeah.
Cold.
Whatever. Just enough for everybody. We should be about 50 to 100 people there. So just bring it up.
It's all on you, Chris.
The first guy that speaks up, man. That's
You know what?
You
know what questions we got? You know, you said we did a seminar last night, so it was a lot of the same topic. You know, when we're transitioning to this cooler water temps, lower tides, windier, yada yada yada. What are you changing different, especially when you fish artificials, in your gear from summertime or fall time redfish compared to this time of year when we've got these cold fronts? I know my answers were, really thinning down on leader especially. Like braid and leader is, I was telling him I go down to about 15, but I know people who have a lot of success, even guys I bump into running 12 fluorocarbon. But we got that question a lot, and that seemed to be a big topic last night about in terms of terminal tackle, line, leader, hook size, presentation size, what's different? And we got that question a lot last night, so I don't know if you guys want to chime in on that.
I'm pretty much just a leader guy. Just downsize the leader. Everything else stays the same.
I would say, and I'll be the technical guy with it, it's going to depend on what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
For a redfish tournament, obviously I'm going to be a lot more particular this time of year. I know there's some redfish tournaments coming up. I'm going to be looking at things a lot different if I'm going out redfishing to catch 2 redfish for a tournament as opposed to going out and doing some trout fishing or whatever. But leader, I think, is a big thing. It's gonna bring your bite or your catch to bite ratio up. I think you are gonna lose some fish a lot of times when you get down to that level, but you find the happy medium. 10 to 12 pound, I think, is like the low end of my spectrum. 20 to 25 pound is normally where I sit. I would say most of the time. This time of year, you talk about some of the differences we make. We're fortunate enough, or we're in the business, so we've got all the little tricks down, like knots and leaders and all that kind of stuff. But there's still a lot of folks that use a swivel that'll still tie a swivel from their main line to their leader.
Sure.
And this is the time of year where I tell people that your terminal tackle, anything extra you add, may cause you a little bit of difference this time of year. You may see a difference in it. So if you're the guy that likes throwing the DOA shrimp and you don't like tying your line-to-line double uni or whatever knot you're going to tie, now would be a good time to learn that. I think that's kind of a big point, especially if you're going to be fishing over sandy areas, clear water, shallow, flat stuff, because that stuff all casts a shadow. And depending on how picky the fish are, I mean, here we are talking about adding shrimp flavor to it and dropping down to this crazy size of leader. But if you're going to tie on a daggum, half-inch swivel in front of the thing, it may make a difference. That's all I'm saying.
It depends on what you're fishing for. I mean, if you're throwing one of these under the bushes and letting it sit,
it probably ain't gonna matter. That's why I say it sort of depends on where you're at and what you're doing.
There's a good question there by Steve in Liverpool, though. Let's talk about
Steve, what's up, dude?
What your fishing plans are for the spring warm-up in a few weeks. What's your plans?
I mean, here's the deal. So the general pattern is that at some point, normally historically late December, early January, we fall into our winter pattern. If there is one, that's when it is. That's rivers, creeks, power plants, all this deep water stuff, the time that we're in right now. As we approach the end of February, and get into March is when we start to see migrations on several different levels throughout the bay. That's going to be your bait migration. That's going to be your fish migrating back out to the flats. And we've often talked about when the bait moves in off the deep water, hits the grass flats, and our mainly snook exit the river systems and estuary that they've been staying in all winter, meet up, and the spring run on the flats is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just about every corner you turn, you could throw a batted chum out, and you got snook busting or redfish in the mix, or the deeper areas have trout. But what happens is just like in the wintertime, there's a period of February, late February, early March where things are moving, and you're going, oh, well, we caught them over there a week ago, and now they're moving out over there.
Yeah.
And so for me, every spring, that's what I like to see. And it's just like what we talked about a few weeks ago when fish were in the spring or fall areas, and they're not quite in the wintertime areas. I think if a fish is smart and they're not dead, they're in their wintertime areas right now. So we're in full bore wintertime pattern. Yeah, exactly. So what do I look forward to, or what do I plan on? It's just a matter of, I want to go out and find some new spots for spring. I want to use these negative low tides to my advantage. You know, every year I try to put on a handful of new spots. Now, people go, well, I've been fishing Cockroach Bay for 35, 40 years, or this, that, and the other. Let me tell you what, it changes every year. A little thing here, a little thing there. Not only does the landscape change, but also does the fish pattern.
Usually not dramatically, though.
Right, but it's
subtle
slight
changes.
variations. In other words, like, let's say there's an island that we fished for years, and I had a spot on the north tip of that island that was great, you know, and that's normally where I'd fish. I'd go to that area. Well, maybe I didn't know that around the other side and off to the edge there was a deep little trough, and when I wasn't fishing over here, them fish were laying over here, you know. And so this is the time of year when you have that clarity. Come April, when we start getting some rain and we start murking back up, you're not going to be able to see those areas. It's just going to look like murk. So getting back to some of your spots that you like, and then kind of springing out from there and seeing what else is around it, that's what I like doing this time of year.
That's another good question he just asked. Any comments on the lack of grouped up redfish schools in the last couple of years?
Man, you're opening a can of worms, Liverpool.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of debate on Facebook. I've been seeing it. I mean, what do you think? Numbers down? That's the debate. I think that's the big question is, you know, and then I think the rhetoric is people coming back and saying, well, I'm catching redfish all the time. Well,
in that area, the area you're
redfish,
fishing.
You know, redfish are being caught. Nobody's doubting that, but the numbers, I think, is the argument that people are really trying to get under the hood on.
Well, I had 0 40 redfish days this year.
Yeah.
And usually we get 4 or 5 days like that.
Yeah.
The most redfish I caught in one day this year, I think, was 13. Out of, you know, on school. We caught 6 the other day, but on school and fish, 13 is the most I caught all year in a day, and that's not many.
Yeah,
that's not many.
Not considering what you know it could be.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean,
I think. I mean, I have mixed opinions on it.
Yeah.
I think. To me, I'm a very optimistic person, and through tournament fishing, I know that there's little fortune sitting under rocks all out there in the bay. Little pods of fish in there. And the only reason I know that is because I've competitive fished for a number of years, and I've been around people, and people are saying, you know, there's fish everywhere, you know, and you're going to pre-fish, and you're like, man, I haven't seen a redfish anywhere.
Well, there are.
You know what I mean? But I think
that's a yes and a no, though.
But my point to that is that yes, I think the population of redfish has declined. I don't think we have the numbers of fish that have balled up and moved up on flats and stayed in areas for long periods of time and moved off and moved back.
Yeah.
I think the pattern has somewhat changed. Maybe some of those fish have split up and done different things. Maybe some of the commercial fishing has affected it. Those are all things we don't know, you know. But what I do know is that there are several places that even this year the schools of redfish showed up.
Yeah.
Now, was there as many as in years past? No. Did I go fish them as much? No. Was there a little more pressure? 100%.
Yeah.
There was more people that knew about those fish being up
Right.
there and that were looking for them.
And I think that's
And
a lot of it. Right
And I
there.
think that, a couple years, 2 years ago, we were fishing an area up, I would say, north of Simmons Park, and we were on a giant school redfish, man. I'm talking like quite a few redfish, and hundreds of redfish. And I can tell you right now that if 4 boats knew about it, I'd write you my paycheck. Nobody knew they were there.
That's
And they
right,
were in
yeah.
a completely one-off, crazy place in like 10 feet of water. And they were getting off this edge, and they were sitting out there, and nobody knew they were there. And I happened to be running across, and I ran them over, and I went, oh,
Yeah.
my goodness.
That just doesn't
And-
happen anymore.
Right. And I went back, and they were and those fish were there. They sat there. Nobody messed with them.
Yeah.
Now, the last 3 or 4 years, or since the 2 years ago, I've seen a handful of fish there, but they're not there.
Yeah.
So they found somewhere else to go, and now that area is heavily trafficked, a lot more than it was, and so those fish don't show up there anymore. But are the fish dead? That's the question. Are they
Yeah.
dead?
I don't think they're dead.
I don't think so.
They move around.
And-
And I haven't chased redfish in 2 or 3 years, where and this is not uncommon for anybody, but to hear of a good redfish bite and go to Sarasota Bay. I haven't fished Sarasota Bay in 4 or 5
Yeah.
years. I used to go down there all the time.
There's
Oh,
a place if you wanna pull a case study on. There's a place that I think Tampa Bay generally has some big schools. It won't be 40 schools, but there'll be 4 schools that have the mass of
Yeah.
Yeah. 10 small schools or whatever. You'll find the big congregations of redfish. Sarasota Bay was another one of those places where, to me, I thought it was like middle of the road. Like you found a lot of schools and they had quite a bit of fish in them. You know what I mean? Down south it gets a little more peppered. You'll find a couple big schools
Right.
and then a bunch of groupies,
Mhm.
10, 15 fish, 10, 15 fish
Wolf
on every
packs.
wolf packs on every point. You know what I mean? But I think because Tampa Bay has been known on some level to be able to find those giant schools where you can sit there and do it, you couldn't be by yourself anymore.
No.
Somebody would see you
Yeah.
with the amount of anglers that are on the water during the week, and just the amount of people that are on the water and that technically know how to fish.
Yeah.
We're doing a good job, obviously, folks like us, of teaching people how to be more technical fishing, and I think it's sort of it's a catch-22. You know what I mean?
Yeah, my friend, I've got a friend, Trey Rodriguez, who I was catching up on the comments. He made a good quote. He didn't presume to know anything about the redfish population, but what he did say, and I'm going to try to quote it as accurately as possible for him, is that one thing that's definitely increased is the number of people harvesting the redfish.
Yes.
Nobody, I don't think anybody, you'd be foolish to argue that compared to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15, the number of anglers, and this is a good thing. I mean, for us, it's a good thing for the economy. There's a lot of good things that are around it, but exponentially, the number of anglers has increased. So
Man,
while
back
we
in the
don't,
80s?
yeah, we can't answer the question about the population of redfish. I mean, none of us really can. We can guess. We can say what we see. The fish might be onto our patterns, or change up their patterns in order to avoid anglers. But the sheer number of people targeting him has gone
Well, that's
up.
why you guys are a little bit younger, so you kind of miss Tampa Bay's glory year. I probably missed it. It was probably even before my time. But back in the 80s, man, catching redfish was – it was –
Right
there
I
with
mean,
jacks.
it wasn't like
Yeah.
it wasn't like
Yep. Snook was the
Louisiana.
thing.
Yeah.
Snook
But
was the
man,
thing.
redfish. I used to, when I was working at Tampa Electric years ago, I would hear guys come in and say, "Man, we went fishing and tried to
we
catch
caught
some
They
redfish."
got 130 redfish.
No, so we tried to catch redfish and couldn't get. And I used to think to myself, "Man, how in the world can you go out there and not catch redfish?" They just didn't know what they were doing. But
Right.
if you had any idea what you were doing back in the mid '80s to probably early '90s, catching redfish was simple.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a no-brainer.
Well, and I
and it's
think,
definitely changed.
and I just think, like, in general, like, here's something, just food for thought. Louisiana. Yeah, we got 1 minute. Louisiana probably has one of the greatest redfish populations in the world, possibly. I'm sure it does. Ton of redfish there, which makes it unique. The other unique thing is that still to this day, you can roll up in a pond, and chances are that at some point those redfish, or some of those redfish, have never even seen a boat.
That's crazy.
Never even seen a boat.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Never, you know what I mean? That they've
Yeah.
moved around their whole life at this point, 3
That's
years.
the- yeah.
They've never even seen a boat. So the way they react is totally different. In Tampa Bay, if you could roll up on a redfish that has never seen a boat, a kayaker, any human
If they
interaction
haven't
with it,
seen one, they've heard of one.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
like it just sort of all plays
Their
into
friend's
it,
been caught
and
by one.
there's
They've
not
lost
a really
friend to it.
whole lot you can do except just keep innovating,
Keep grinding, baby.
keep grinding, keep going.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, man, that you just the fish are there somewhere.
Yeah.
You just got to keep going, because there's been plenty of times that even in the spring when I'm snook fishing, I go and I got 3 or 4 spots. I'm gonna go hit an area, and every one of them little areas has either got a boat in it, or I just saw a boat leave, or the wind's not right, or whatever. And I'll go right around the corner in an area that I've never really focused on fishing, and in 15 minutes find a better spot than what I was going to,
Yeah.
right around the corner. And I always encourage people to do that, because the more you follow us around, the more you're just wearing it out too. And at some point, the hole's gonna dry up.
Yeah.
You know, so
Sure.
find the new holes. But
All right, man. We're done. Wrap her up.
boys,
I
Wrap her
bet
up.
you
been
that's
good.
an ongoing topic. I bet you we're going to get more
Redfish?
questions about that.
Yeah, we'll talk redfish all you want, man.
That's
But guys,
Travis's passion.
they're a cool fish. But anyway, guys, we appreciate you joining us for another week of Tampa Fishing Outfitters Live Fishing Report. And we'll be here next week, Wednesday,
Yeah,
6
back on
p.m.
Wednesdays next
Back on
week.
Wednesday, we'll have Captain Jason with us. If you want to get a hold of us, do some fishing charters. My cell phone number is 813-830-3474. That's Captain Travis, Captain Rick,
813-601-2900.
and Captain James.
813-625-2067. LocalKnowledgeFishing.com.
Guys, we appreciate it. Till next week, tight lines, and